Okay, so this is my dad. When was your birthday?
December 1st, 1962.
And when was your high school graduation day?
It was June 5th, 1981.
Alright, so I have 25 questions that I'm going to ask you about your teen years. So, what were some popular slang terms that you and your friends would use, or anyone?
Hey, dude.
Okay, was that it? Was that it?
Gnarly, dude.
Okay.
I don't know.
Who were your idols that you looked up to as a teen?
Idols that I looked to as a teen. Willie Mays, like athletes and stuff like that.
Yes, anyone.
Uh, JFK, even though he died when I was like 2 years old. Let's see. My grandfather.
Alright, what were your favorite classes in high school?
History.
Is that it?
I had a woods class that I really enjoyed. I also had consumer ed.
Alright, did you have any nicknames?
Ace.
Who called you Ace?
People.
Like who?
Clint, my ex-brother-in-law, and some people call me Tex because I lived down in Texas for 2 years.
Alright, how would you compare teens back then to teens today?
I would say that they're probably a little more educated because
Teens today are more educated?
Yes, because of the technology. But they're not as hardworking as we were. It seems like each newer generation gets a little lazier and expects more.
Alright, what did you want to do after graduating high school?
I wanted to become an architect.
Did you want to go to, like, architectural college? Like, right after?
Yeah.
Alright, what were your views on politics?
I've never really been too much on politics. It gets me in trouble. Because everybody always wants to argue about it, so I usually stay away from it. But I do have my opinions, but I try not to discuss it with people.
Alright, what was your proudest moment in your teenage years?
Being on my high school soccer team, having a good team that made it to the state playoffs. Let's see. Graduating high school.
Alright, what will you do in your spare time? Like, as a teen?
What would I do in my spare time?
Yeah.
Play soccer. Hang out with my friends in the neighborhood.
What would you guys do?
We used to build forts and stuff like that. So I used to live in a wooded area, and we used to build.
Would you go to, like, diners or something to hang out?
No, because we didn't have money.
Oh, alright.
That's a little different nowadays, where we allow you guys, we give you money to go out with your friends to go eat. My parents did not. Put it on pause.
Alright, what type of clothes did you wear?
Jeans, t-shirts.
Like any different brands?
You mean all the brands?
Yeah.
Oh, Levi's. You know, I just can't remember all the clothing. You know.
Alright, what was your favorite type of music as a teen?
Rock.
Why?
That's what I liked.
Did a lot of people like that? Was that like most of what the teens liked?
Yeah.
Like Elvis?
No.
Oh, that was before you?
Yeah, way before me. Sorry, sorry.
Like who?
Like like the Talking Heads, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Steely. Did I say Steely Dan?
No.
Steely Dan. Just different groups.
What is something...
Different group, different era.
What is something that you miss from your teenage years?
The camaraderie of like all my high school friends and soccer teammates and just not having all the responsibilities as an adult and parent and employee. I just would. It was a good time. High school years were a good time.
What were your thoughts on the Vietnam War?
It was going on when I was a youth, and I didn't really know much about it, and my family didn't talk about it that much. I didn't have any close relatives that were in the Vietnam War because of the time span of the generations. It was after my parents and before my cousins and my, were of age or whatever, and then the war ended. So I really didn't, know much about it as a youth. But as I grew up, I realized that we should have never been there. So that's my opinion on that.
What were the major values that you lived by?
Pardon?
What were the major values that you lived by?
The nature of values?
Major, like, what were the standards that you lived by, like, rules that you followed?
Well, I would always listen to my parents, I mean, for the most part. Otherwise, you got in trouble.
Alright, what would you and your friends do to have fun?
Go to the park, go to the forest preserve. I lived right by a forest preserve. There was a golf course and tennis courts and baseball fields, and we used to go fishing down at the park. Again, we used to build the forts, and we used to do BMX, bicycle motocross. We do a lot of stuff.
Alright, what type of clothing was unacceptable to wear by, like, the parents? Like, what would they not want their kids wearing?
Well, I imagine the parents didn't like the girls wearing tube tops, which were, kind of provocative. Low cut dresses. Not so much anything that the guys wore, but it usually was things that the girls would wear or not wear.
Alright, what type of cars did teens drive?
Chevelles, Camaros, Firebirds, Corvettes,
What did you think of the hippies?
I wasn't a hippie because the hippies were kind of like the era right before me, which was during the Vietnam War. I remember one time we had a bunch of them chase us when I was a kid.
Why?
We were riding our bikes and they started chasing us.
What did you do?
Nothing. They were just trying to scare us. So.
Alright, what were your thoughts on the shootings at Kent State?
Again, that was when I was real young, and I remember hearing about it and reading about it. If I recall, it wasn't a good thing. I think it got out of hand, and they didn't know how to control the situation.
Alright, and if I was to go back to your time as a teen, what would shock me the most?
What would shock you the most? Um, how spoiled you guys really are compared to what we had and what our parents would allow us to do. Um, I wanted my kids to have things that I didn't have when I was younger. So I make sure that you guys get everything that I wanted to have as a youth that I didn't have.
Alright, what were your thoughts on like the segregation between white students and black students at schools? Or when like the black and white students would go to school together. Did you have any thought on that? People would like throw stuff at them?
Not really. Nothing like that ever. I don't recall anything like that happening in my school. And I was in a predominantly white school. I would say, like when I was in high school, there was probably 2,200 to maybe 2,400 students, and there was about 10 blacks.
Were they like treated differently?
Not really. Actually, I didn't notice it, and I didn't treat anybody differently. No.
Alright, who were like the best presidents and worst presidents in your teenage years?
Some people say Reagan was the worst president. In my teenage years, because there's only you only have 8 years, 9 years of being a teenager, or 7 years, or whatever. And some people say Jimmy Carter was a bad president too, because the interest rate was the highest at the time. I think it went up to like 16% when Jimmy Carter was in office. But
alright, what were some popular inventions?
Inventions. Well, I'd say it was real close to the time when I was maybe 19 years old. The first cell phone, I think, came out. It was called the bag phone.
How big was it?
It was in a bag, and it was awkward and gaudy and didn't work very well.
Like not many people had them?
No, and they're very expensive. Then they came out with the handheld ones, and they looked like a military grade phone that was kind of cumbersome compared to the streamlined portable phones that they have now.
What was something you really wanted as a teen?
A car.
When did you get your first car?
I got my first car when I was 18.
Alright. What was your first job?
I worked at a gas station.
And how was it?
It wasn't bad. It was my first job that I actually got on my own. It was my first full-time job, and it was at a Citgo gas station, about half a mile from my house, and I was the first employee at this gas station when it opened.
Alright, and last question, what was the thing you got into the most trouble for at school? Like the biggest trouble you got into at one situation?
I really didn't get in trouble in school.
You don't remember at all?
I mean, I was kind of a class clown, but I never really got in trouble. The only time I really got in trouble is my senior ditch day. I ditched, and I didn't have permission from my parents, and they called home, and I got like a day detention or something like that. But other than that, I really didn't get in trouble.
Alright, well that's it. Thank you.